My name is Matthew, 29 years old, and I work as a software developer in Boston. After years of saving, I finally bought my downtown apartment and was proud of my achievement. My relationship with my family has always been good, despite occasional tension. Nothing prepared me for coming home early one day to find someone in my apartment. That moment changed everything. My boundaries were violated by the people I trusted most, and I had to make a decision that altered our family dynamic forever. Before I dive into how my family betrayed my trust, let me know where you are watching from. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up for yourself against family who crossed the line. I grew up in a middle-class home in suburban Massachusetts. My childhood was comfortable if not lavish. My parents Robert and Linda worked hard to provide for me and my younger sister Ashley. Dad worked in insurance while Mom taught elementary school. We lived in a modest 4-bedroom house with a small backyard where we had barbecues in summer and built snowmen in winter. As a kid, I was always the responsible one. I got good grades, participated in computer club, and saved my allowance. By contrast, Ashley was more free-spirited. She changed hobbies weekly, spent money as soon as she got it, and relied on charm to get out of trouble. My parents found her spontaneity endearing while they appreciated my reliability but took it for granted. When it came time for college, I chose the state university to study computer science. It was affordable and had a solid program. I worked part-time at the campus IT department to minimize student loans and spent weekends coding personal projects rather than partying. Those 4 years were tough but rewarding, and I graduated with decent grades and manageable debt. My first job out of college was an entry-level position at a software company. The pay was average, but I saw it as a stepping stone. I lived in a tiny studio apartment with roommates, ate ramen noodles most nights, and put every spare dollar toward paying off student loans. Meanwhile, Ashley dropped out of community college after 3 semesters, cycled through retail jobs, and moved back home with our parents. Over the next 5 years, I worked my way up to senior developer. Each promotion came with more responsibility and better pay. I started building an emergency fund, then a down payment fund. By 27, I had saved enough to buy my own place. It was a small 1-bedroom apartment in a desirable neighborhood downtown, but it was mine. The closing day when I got those keys was one of the proudest moments of my life. My relationship with my family remained steady through these years. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were a tradition. Dad would grill steaks in summer or make his famous chili in winter. Mom would ask about my work, though her eyes glazed over when I got technical. Ashley would breeze in late, sometimes with a new boyfriend, sometimes with tales of a new job prospect. As for Ashley, her pattern continued into her mid-20s. She would find an apartment, then get evicted for late rent. She would land a promising job, then quit because her boss was unfair or the hours were too demanding. She would date guys who treated her poorly, then need emotional support when they inevitably broke up. Through it all, our parents provided a safety net. They paid her security deposits, covered her rent when she was short, and welcomed her home between apartments. I noticed a shift in my parents' behavior after I bought my apartment. What started as pride in my achievement gradually morphed into expectations. If I could afford my own place, surely I could help Ashley more. If I had a spare couch, maybe Ashley could stay there when she was between apartments. If I had extra space in my closet, perhaps I could store some of Ashley's things. 3 months ago, we had a family dinner where this tension came to a head. Ashley had just been let go from her waitressing job for too many late arrivals. Her landlord was threatening eviction for unpaid rent. Mom served lasagna, my favorite, which should have been my first clue she wanted something. Dad poured wine generously. The conversation started casually enough. Mom mentioned how nice my apartment was and how I had that comfortable couch. Dad talked about family sticking together during tough times. Then they suggested I let Ashley stay with me until she got back on her feet. I had anticipated this request and prepared my response. I offered to help Ashley with her resume, to introduce her to contacts in customer service roles, to coach her on interview skills. What I would not offer was my home. I valued my space, my routine, my privacy. The temperature in the room dropped. Mom pushed the lasagna toward me, no longer meeting my eyes. Dad refilled his wine glass, his knuckles white around the stem. Ashley looked between us all, tears welling up. "You always were selfish with your toys, Matthew," she said, "even as kids." Dad cleared his throat. "Your mother and I helped with your down payment. Did you forget that?" They had contributed $5,000 toward my closing costs, a generous gift I had thanked them for repeatedly. But it represented less than 5% of what I had saved and paid myself. "I appreciate that help," I said carefully. "But my apartment is my personal space. I need it for my mental health and work performance. I can help Ashley in other ways." Mom sighed, that martyred sigh I knew so well. "We raised you to value family above material things. I guess those lessons did not stick." The evening ended awkwardly with promises to think about things and talk more later. On the drive home, I felt the familiar weight of guilt they had always been skilled at placing on my shoulders. But I also felt something new: resentment at the assumption that my boundaries were less important than Ashley's needs. In the weeks that followed, I noticed small disturbances in my apartment. Food I did not remember eating was missing from my refrigerator. Items on my coffee table were rearranged. Sometimes I caught unfamiliar scents like perfume or cigarette smoke. I attributed these oddities to stress and overwork. Perhaps I was becoming forgetful due to long hours coding. Then one day, my neighbor George mentioned seeing my family members entering my apartment. "Nice of your folks to check on your place while you work those long hours," he said in the elevator. I froze. "My parents? When?" "Oh, different times," he shrugged. "Usually weekday afternoons. Your sister was with them once or twice." I thanked him casually, not wanting to reveal my confusion. As the elevator doors closed, I felt a chill run down my spine. My parents had a spare key for emergencies, only which I had given them reluctantly when I first moved in. They had never mentioned using it. As far as I knew, they had never given my sister access to my apartment. Yet something was clearly happening behind my back. I considered confronting them immediately, but decided to gather more information first. Little did I know how quickly the situation would escalate. The following Tuesday, a client meeting was unexpectedly canceled. Normally, I would have stayed at the office to catch up on other projects, but a nagging suspicion prompted me to head home early. As I approached my apartment door around 2 in the afternoon, I heard sounds that stopped me: cold television, laughter, and someone moving around inside. With my key in the lock, I hesitated momentarily, feeling like an intruder in my own home. When I finally pushed the door open, the scene before me was surreal. Ashley was sprawled on my couch wearing pajama pants and eating cereal from my favorite bowl. Her feet were propped on my coffee table, her laptop open beside her, and several empty soda cans scattered around. "Oh, hey, bro," she said casually, barely glancing up from the reality show she was watching. "You are home early." I stood frozen in the doorway, keys still in hand. "What are you doing in my apartment?" She looked at me as if I were asking the most obvious question in the world. "Watching The Bachelor. This episode is wild." "No, I mean," I began, struggling to form coherent thoughts. "How did you get in here? Why are you here?" "Mom and Dad gave me a key like 3 weeks ago," she shrugged, turning back to the television. "They said it was fine since you have all this extra space anyway." I moved further into the apartment, noticing details that had been invisible in my initial shock. A makeup bag on the kitchen counter, unfamiliar shoes by the door, a phone charger I did not recognize plugged into my wall. "Have you been staying here?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Yeah, I got evicted from my last place," she said, as if this were a minor inconvenience rather than a major life event. "Mom and Dad said I could crash here until I find something new. You are never home anyway." In disbelief, I walked to my bathroom. Ashley's toiletries cluttered the counter. Makeup, hair products, face creams. My towels were on the floor, damp and balled up. In my bedroom, I found the closet partially filled with her clothes. A suitcase lay open on the floor with more belongings spilling out. As I stood there trying to process this invasion, I heard my front door open. Turning, I saw my parents walking in, carrying shopping bags and a small box. They stopped short when they saw me. "Matthew," Mom exclaimed, her surprise quickly morphing into a forced smile. What a nice surprise. We did not expect you home so early. Dad set down the box, which I could now see contained more of Ashley's belongings. You should have told us you were coming home, son. We could have had lunch together. The casual way they entered my apartment, the shopping bags, the box. Everything suddenly clicked into place. How long has this been going on? I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. Mom spoke first, her tone soothing, as if explaining to a child. Ashley needed a place to stay after her eviction. We knew you would want to help your sister. And we knew you would make a fuss if we asked directly, Dad added, after how you reacted at dinner. So we thought it best to ease into the arrangement. Ease into the arrangement, I repeated. You made copies of my keys without permission and moved my sister into my apartment behind my back. You are making it sound so dramatic, Mom sighed. It is a temporary situation, just until Ashley finds her feet. Which I am totally working on, Ashley chimed in from the couch, not bothering to turn around. I have some promising leads. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. This is completely unacceptable. You cannot just move someone into my home without my knowledge or consent. We are family, Dad said firmly, as if this explained and excused everything. Family helps family. Your mother and I taught you that your entire life. I remembered my neighbor's comment about seeing them enter my apartment. How long have you been coming in here? Ashley answered before they could. They gave me the key about 3 weeks ago, but they have been checking on the place for you longer than that. Checking on the place, I echoed. Mom nodded earnestly, making sure everything was okay. Watering your plants. She glanced at my lone cactus, which needed minimal care. And since you have all these streaming services you barely use, Ashley continued, it seemed silly for me to pay for my own. Same with food and stuff. You have plenty. The casual entitlement in her voice sent anger surging through me. I turned back to my parents. This is breaking and entering. It is a violation of my privacy and my trust. Dad scoffed. Breaking and entering? Do not be ridiculous. We helped with your down payment, remember? This place is partly thanks to us. That $5,000 again. The gift that apparently came with lifetime access rights. You gave me a gift, I said firmly. That does not make you co-owners of my property. Mom clicked her tongue disapprovingly. No one is claiming to own anything. We are simply helping your sister during a difficult time. You have always been so territorial, even as a child. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to think clearly. This is my home, my private space. You all need to leave, and I need my keys back. Where is Ashley supposed to go? Mom demanded, her voice rising. Back to our house, where there is barely room since we converted her bedroom to a craft space to the street. That is not my problem to solve. I began, then immediately regretted my words, as all three of them looked at me with identical expressions of shock and disappointment. Your own sister, Dad said quietly. Not your problem. I backtracked, trying a different approach. Look, we can discuss options for Ashley. I can help her find an affordable place, maybe contribute to her first month's rent somewhere. But she cannot live here. Mom and Dad looked at each other again, having one of those silent conversations long married couples perfect. Finally, Dad spoke. We understand you are surprised, he said, in a tone that suggested he was being extremely reasonable. It will take some adjustment, but you will get used to the arrangement. Ashley is very quiet and neat. This was so patently untrue given the mess already spreading through my apartment that I almost laughed. I am not asking for an adjustment period, I insisted. I am telling you this arrangement ends today. Now, Ashley needs to pack her things and you all need to leave. Mom sat down heavily on my armchair. We already spoke to your landlord, she said. We explained that Ashley is your authorized guest. He was very understanding. You did what I felt like I was in some bizarre, alternate reality. You spoke to my landlord about my apartment without my knowledge. We did not want him to be concerned about an unauthorized tenant. Dad explained, as if this were a perfectly rational action. It is all taken care of. The three of them looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to accept their invasion as a fait accompli. In that moment, I realized that simple reason and requests would not resolve this situation. My boundaries had been not just crossed, but obliterated, and they saw nothing wrong with their actions. "I need time to think," I said, finally, knowing I needed to strategize rather than continue this circular conversation. "But for now, I am asking you all to leave." "But where will I sleep tonight?" Ashley asked, finally turning off the television to fully engage. "That is not Matthew's concern, apparently," Mom said, with wounded dignity gathering her purse. "We will figure something out. We always do." They left reluctantly, without returning any keys, and with only the shopping bags they had brought that day. Ashley's suitcase toiletries and the various items they had gradually moved in remained scattered throughout my apartment. As I locked the door behind them, I leaned against it, trying to process what had just happened. My home, my sanctuary, had been invaded with stunning entitlement, and somehow I was being cast as the villain for objecting. Little did I know this was only the beginning of a boundary battle that would eventually lead to police involvement and family fracture. But in that moment, all I felt was violated and alone in my own home. After the initial confrontation, I hoped my family would reflect on their actions and respect my clearly stated boundaries. This hope proved naive. Over the next 2 weeks, the situation escalated in ways I never imagined possible. The day after discovering Ashley in my apartment, I called a family meeting at my parents' house. I arrived with a rehearsed speech about privacy boundaries and mutual respect. Before I could deliver it, I discovered my parents had invited my grandparents to dinner as well. "Matthew has something important to discuss," Mom announced as we sat down to pot roast. Grandma beamed at me. "Are you finally dating someone serious, dear?" "No," I began, wrong-footed already. "This is about Ashley staying at my apartment." Grandpa nodded approvingly. "So generous of you to help your sister. Family first always." "Except I did not agree to it," I explained. "They moved her in without telling me." What followed was 2 hours of circular conversation about family obligations. My grandparents reminisced about how their 7 siblings shared 3 bedrooms during the Depression. My parents reiterated how they had supported me through college. Ashley tearfully described her desperate housing situation. By the end, I was exhausted and no closer to resolution. As I left, Grandpa clasped my shoulder. "Be a good brother, Matthew. Remember family values." I drove home only to find Ashley had returned to my apartment while I was at the family meeting. She was using my computer, claiming her laptop battery was dead. The next day, I discovered she had used my expensive face wash and cologne. When I confronted her, she rolled her eyes. "We are siblings. We shared a bathroom growing up. What is the big deal?" The following evening, I came home to find Ashley hosting 3 friends for a movie night. They were drinking my craft beer and had ordered pizza on my account. When I objected, one friend looked confused. "Ashley said you were cool with her staying here, that you guys were close." The violations continued. I found my personal journal had been moved from its drawer. My financial documents were disorganized. A collector's edition action figure I kept in its original packaging was broken, with Ashley claiming it was an accident. The final straw came when I discovered half of my whiskey collection had been consumed. These were special bottles I had collected over years, some gifts from clients, others rare finds from distillery tours. I confronted Ashley, who shrugged it off. "I replaced it with cheaper stuff. You cannot even tell the difference." I began researching tenant rights and unauthorized occupancy. I learned that in Massachusetts, even squatters gain certain rights after 30 days of residence. This alarmed me enough to contact my landlord directly. Mr. Stevens was sympathetic, but cautious. "Your parents seemed very concerned about you," he explained. "They said your sister needed temporary emergency housing due to domestic issues. I assumed you had authorized it." "I absolutely did not," I clarified. "And there were no domestic issues. She was evicted for not paying rent." He frowned. "That puts me in an awkward position. Your lease clearly states no unauthorized tenants. This could potentially be grounds for your eviction." This new threat to my housing stability pushed me to call another family meeting. This time I held it at a neutral coffee shop and came armed with printouts of my lease agreement, tenant laws, and a list of affordable housing options for Ashley. My parents arrived late, and immediately went on offense. "We have discussed this as a family," Dad announced before I could speak. "If you force Ashley out, we will have no choice but to tell the entire extended family how you abandoned your sister in her time of need." Mom nodded grimly. "Thanksgiving, Christmas, family reunions. Everyone will know." Ashley dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "I have nowhere else to go." I pushed the list of housing options toward her. "You have at least 5 viable alternatives here. I am willing to help with application fees and security deposits." She glanced at the list and pushed it back. "None of these are in good neighborhoods, and they are all studios or roommate situations. I need my own space." The irony of this statement, given how she had invaded my space, was apparently lost on her. Dad leaned forward. "Son, I do not think you understand. We never saw that apartment as truly yours. We contributed to it, we have a stake in it. A $5,000 stake, in a place that cost 20 times that I pointed out." Mom touched my hand. "Family resources should be shared. When your father and I pass someday, the house will be split between you and Ashley. This is no different." This comparison made no sense, but before I could argue further, Ashley dropped another bombshell. "Plus, Tyler stays over sometimes. He cannot stay at his parents' place because they are super strict." Tyler, her boyfriend of 3 months who I had met exactly once. A 26-year-old part-time DJ with a neck tattoo and a perpetual vape pen. "Tyler has been in my apartment." I clarified, my voice rising. "Just sometimes," Ashley said defensively. "He is super respectful of your stuff." I later discovered this was a lie. Tyler had been staying over frequently, using my gaming system, eating my food, and even wearing my clothes when he did not have clean laundry. The situation at home deteriorated rapidly. I found myself sleeping on my own couch because Ashley had taken over my bedroom, claiming the mattress in the living room hurt her back. My work performance suffered as I lost sleep and focus. My normally tidy apartment became cluttered with Ashley's belongings, takeout containers, and laundry she never quite got around to putting away. One evening, I came home to find Tyler alone in my apartment, feet on my coffee table, using my laptop. "Where is Ashley?" I demanded. "Work shift," he mumbled, not looking up from whatever he was doing. "She said I could chill here." When I told him to leave, he became confrontational. "Look, man," your sister said. "It was cool. You need to learn to share your toys, rich boy." Rich boy. As if my modest apartment, purchased through years of saving and sacrifice, made me Scrooge McDuck swimming in gold coins. "Get out," I said firmly. He stood, puffing up his chest. "Or what you gonna call mommy and daddy?" I stepped aside from the door. "Leave now, or I call the police." He laughed, gathering his belongings with deliberate slowness. "Yeah, right. Ashley told me how your parents have your back on this. You would not dare." After he finally left, I did a sweep of the apartment and discovered several disturbing things. My credit card statement showed purchases I had not made. My passport and birth certificate had clearly been handled in my desk drawer. Most alarmingly, I found a partially completed application for an apartment transfer in my name, requesting a 2-bedroom unit in the same building at my expense. The next day, I received an email from my supervisor expressing concerns about my recent performance and focus. 3 coding errors had made it to production in the past week, something that had never happened before. That night, I could not sleep. The apartment I had worked so hard for no longer felt like mine. Every surface held evidence of invasion. Every item felt contaminated by unauthorized use. The psychological toll was becoming unbearable. I scheduled an emergency session with my therapist, Dr. Rivera, who helped me see the situation clearly. "What you are describing is not just boundary violation, Matthew," she said. "It is a form of emotional abuse. They are gaslighting you into believing your completely reasonable boundaries are selfish and wrong." "But they are my family," I protested weakly. "Family should respect you, not exploit you," she countered. "What would you advise a friend in your situation?" The answer was clear. Document everything, secure the space, and if necessary, involve authorities. The thought made me sick to my stomach, but I was running out of options. I sent a final warning text to my parents. "And Ashley, I have not given permission for anyone to enter or live in my apartment. Any further entry without my explicit invitation will be considered trespassing. Please return all keys immediately. Their responses were illuminating. Mom sent a laughing emoji followed by, "Stop being so dramatic." Dad wrote, "Family does not trespass on family." Ashley did not respond at all but posted Instagram stories from my apartment captioned, "New place vibes" with the location tagged. 2 days later I came home to find Ashley, Tyler, and 2 of their friends smoking inside my apartment. The smoke detector had been disabled. Beer cans littered my kitchen. Someone had spilled red wine on my area rug. And Tyler was wearing my favorite sweater. As I stood in the doorway, taking in the scene, I knew I had reached my breaking point. The time for family meetings and reasonable discussions was over. I needed to take decisive action to reclaim my home and my sanity. After finding Tyler and friends smoking in my apartment, I spent the night at my friend Jacob's place. Jacob worked as a paralegal at a law firm specializing in tenant rights, and his advice proved invaluable. "What your family is doing is unequivocally illegal," he told me as we sat in his kitchen. "Breaking and entering, trespassing, possible identity theft with that apartment transfer application. These are serious offenses." "But they are my family," I said, for what felt like the 100th time. "I do not want to ruin their lives." Jacob fixed me with a steady look. "They do not seem concerned about ruining yours." He helped me understand my legal options. I could file for a restraining order. I could pursue civil action for damages. Or I could file a police report for unauthorized entry and pursue criminal charges. None of these options felt good. All would permanently alter my family relationships. But continuing as things were was destroying my mental health, threatening my job, and could potentially lead to my own eviction. The next day, I took the first step by changing my locks. I hired a locksmith who assured me the new keys could not be duplicated without my written authorization. I felt a small sense of security as the new deadbolt clicked into place. That security lasted exactly 26 hours. I returned from work the following evening to find Ashley once again lounging in my living room. "How did you get in?" I demanded, staring at the intact new locks. She smirked. "Mom and Dad talked to the building manager. They told him they were helping you through a mental health crisis and needed access for your own safety. He let them make new copies." The violation was so profound I felt physically ill. My own parents had lied about my mental health to override my explicit boundaries. I began documenting everything. I photographed damaged items and made a spreadsheet of missing belongings. I saved text messages and emails. I recorded conversations when legally permitted. I created a timeline of unauthorized entries. I also consulted with a lawyer recommended by Jacob. She confirmed that I had strong grounds for legal action, but cautioned that family court battles can be emotionally devastating. She suggested one final, formally documented attempt to resolve the situation before pursuing legal remedies. Following her advice, I sent a certified letter to my parents and Ashley, explicitly revoking any permission to enter my apartment, demanding the return of all keys and itemizing damages to date. I concluded with a clear statement that further violations would result in police involvement. Their response came 3 days later. Ashley posted photos of herself having a girls' night in my apartment. My mother called to tell me I was being ridiculous and needed to grow up. My father emailed that as a partially financial contributor to my home, he retained rights to determine its use. During this time, my anxiety reached new heights. I installed a small legal security camera in my living room that sent alerts to my phone when it detected motion. I moved valuable and sentimental items to a storage unit. I began staying late at work to avoid going home to what no longer felt like my sanctuary. Then came the incident that forced my final decision. I received a motion alert while in a work meeting and checked the feed on my phone. Tyler was in my apartment alone, going through my desk drawers. As I watched, he found my emergency cash envelope and pocketed several $100s. I left work immediately and confronted him at my apartment. The resulting argument became heated. He denied taking anything despite the video evidence on my phone. When I threatened to call police, he stepped close to me, his face inches from mine. "Your prissy sister has been telling everyone what a selfish jerk you are," he sneered. "How you live in this nice place while she struggles. Nobody would blame me for taking a little rich boy tax." Then he shoved me. Not hard enough to knock me down, but enough to make his threat clear. Enough to make me fear what might happen if I continued to sleep in an apartment where he had access. That evening I called the non-emergency police line. I explained the situation calmly, providing dates, times, and evidence of unauthorized entry. The officer was sympathetic and helped me understand my options. "Sir, what you are describing is breaking and entering, trespassing, theft, and potentially other crimes," he explained. "We can document this, but to take action, you would need to be willing to press charges against your family. Are you prepared to do that?" Was I? The question haunted me through a sleepless night on Jacob's couch. I thought about the years of maintaining peace in my family by giving in. I thought about the thousands of dollars in damages and stolen items. I thought about Tyler's threatening behavior and my parents' blatant disregard for my clearly stated boundaries. By morning, I had made my decision. I would reclaim my home, my boundaries, and my self-respect, even if it meant taking legal action against my own family. I spoke with my landlord, explaining the full situation with documentation. Far from threatening my tenancy, he was horrified by what had happened and agreed to enforce strict security protocols going forward. The building manager who had been duped by my parents was formally reprimanded. I spoke with my supervisor at work, giving a brief professional explanation of the personal crisis affecting my performance. She was surprisingly understanding and arranged for me to take 3 personal days to address the situation. I spoke with Dr. Rivera again, who validated my decision to take legal action. "This is not about punishing them," she reminded me. "It is about protecting yourself and establishing consequences for truly unacceptable behavior." My plan was simple but difficult. I would document one final, incontrovertible instance of unauthorized entry. I would have police ready to respond, and I would press charges if necessary to ensure the behavior stopped permanently. I told my family I was leaving town for a business trip, then stayed with Jacob while monitoring my security camera. Within hours of my supposed departure, the camera alerted me to movement. My parents and Ashley were in my apartment this time with a small moving truck. They were bringing in more furniture, including a bed frame that would clearly not fit in my one-bedroom apartment without removing my existing furniture. I watched in real time as they rearranged my living room, pushing my couch against the wall to make room for Ashley's desk. I watched as Tyler arrived with his DJ equipment. I watched as Ashley opened a bottle of my wine to celebrate their new setup. It was time. With a shaking hand, I called the police. The police suggested I meet them near my building rather than confronting my family alone. As I waited on a bench across the street watching 2 officers approach, I felt simultaneously sick with dread and relieved that action was finally being taken. The officers, Peterson and Ramirez, reviewed the evidence on my phone, the security footage, the text messages explicitly revoking permission, the documented damages. "And you are certain you want to pursue this?" Officer Peterson asked. "These are criminal charges against family members." "I am certain," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "They have left me no choice." We approached my apartment together. Officer Ramirez suggested I unlock the door myself and enter first, followed immediately by them. This would establish my legal residency and their status as uninvited intruders. My hand trembled slightly as I turned the key. When I pushed the door open, the scene inside froze me in place. Ashley and Tyler were cuddled on my couch. My parents were arranging framed photos on my mantel. They had ordered pizza, opened my wine, and turned my thermostat up to 76 degrees. Music played from speakers that had not been there that morning. For a moment, no one moved. Then Ashley spotted the uniformed officers behind me. "What the hell, Matthew?" she exclaimed. My parents stood in unison, confusion giving way to indignation. "What is this about?" Dad demanded, stepping forward as if to shield Ashley. Officer Peterson spoke calmly. "Sir, we have received a complaint about unauthorized entry and occupancy of this residence." Mom laughed nervously. "There must be some mistake. This is our son's apartment. We are just helping him and his sister." Ramirez turned to me. "Mr. Harris, do these individuals have permission to be in your home?" No, I stated clearly. They do not. I have repeatedly asked them to leave and return my keys. I have explicitly revoked any permission to enter in writing. My mother gasped. Matthew James Harris, what are you doing? Officer Peterson continued professionally. May I see identification from everyone, please? As my family fumbled for IDs, Tyler stood up, his posture confrontational. This is ridiculous. We were invited. That is not my understanding, Ramirez replied evenly. Mr. Harris has provided evidence that he explicitly prohibited your presence here. Ashley began to cry, looking between me and the officers. He is my brother. This is what families do. They help each other. Mom rushed to her side, putting an arm around her shoulders while glaring at me. I cannot believe you would do this to your own sister. To us, after all we have done for you. Dad approached me directly, lowering his voice. Son, send these officers away, and we can talk about this reasonably, as a family. I shook my head. We are past that point. I have tried reasoning with you for weeks. Ramirez stepped between us. Sir, please step back and remain calm. As the officers explained the situation, my family cycled through disbelief, anger, and attempts at manipulation. Mom cried about family loyalty. Dad invoked their parental authority. Ashley sobbed about having nowhere to go. The officers remained unmoved. They explained that I was the legal resident and had the right to determine who could enter my home. They outlined the potential charges: criminal trespass, breaking, and entering theft for the missing items. This is insane, Dad sputtered. We are his parents. The law does not make exceptions for family members, Sir Peterson explained patiently. Adults have the right to control access to their private residences regardless of relationship. When they requested my family turn over any keys to my apartment, Tyler suddenly bolted for the door. Ramirez blocked his exit. Sir, please remain where you are. Tyler shoved the officer a critical error that instantly escalated the situation. Within seconds, he was restrained, and being informed he was under arrest for assaulting an officer. This triggered chaos. Ashley screamed. My mother wailed. My father demanded to call his lawyer, and I stood frozen watching my family implode in my living room. When the officers asked if I wanted to press charges for the unauthorized entry, all eyes turned to me. The weight of the decision pressed down on my shoulders. I thought about the weeks of invasion, the theft, the gaslighting, the complete disregard for my clearly stated boundaries. Yes, I said quietly. Yes, I want to press charges. What followed was surreal. My parents and Ashley were formally arrested for criminal trespass. Tyler received additional charges for assaulting an officer and possessing marijuana. They were handcuffed and escorted from the building. As they were led to patrol cars, neighbors watched from doorways and windows. My mother sobbed loudly about her perfect son betraying his family. My father maintained stony silence. Ashley alternated between crying and cursing at me. Tyler threatened vague retribution once he was released. I provided detailed statements and evidence to the officers. I showed them the damaged items, the security footage, the texts and emails, documenting my repeated requests for them to leave and return my keys. I signed formal complaints and was given information about the legal process that would follow. After they left, I stood alone in my apartment. The silence was deafening after the chaos. I looked around at the space that no longer felt like mine. Pizza boxes and wine glasses on my coffee table. Ashley's clothing draped over furniture. A framed family photo my mother had placed on the mantel as if to remind me of what I was destroying. I sat on the edge of my couch and put my head in my hands. Relief mingled with grief. I had reclaimed my space, but potentially lost my family. The necessary choice still felt like failure. That evening I changed the locks again. I cleaned obsessively, removing every trace of their presence. I rearranged furniture, washed every dish, laundered every textile. Physical control was the only thing I could manage as my emotional world collapsed. My phone exploded with messages from extended family. How could you? What kind of monster are you? They were only trying to help. I silenced notifications and focused on securing my home. The next day, I met with a therapist who specialized in family trauma. She helped me understand that what I had experienced was a severe violation of boundaries that required decisive action. She assured me that protecting myself was not selfish or wrong. In the days that followed, I learned that my parents and Ashley had been released on their own recognizance. Tyler, with a previous record, remained in custody longer. Preliminary court dates were set. My lawyer advised me on restraining orders and civil suits for damages. The immediate crisis had passed, but the aftermath was just beginning. I had enforced my boundaries in the most definitive way possible. Now I had to live with the consequences of that necessary but painful decision. The legal proceedings began 2 weeks after the arrests. My parents and Ashley were charged with criminal trespass, a misdemeanor in Massachusetts. Tyler faced more serious charges due to his confrontation with the officer and prior record. I attended the arraignment with my lawyer sitting at the back of the courtroom. My family did not acknowledge me. Mom wore church clothes, as if dressing respectably might influence the judge. Dad looked older than I remembered, his shoulders hunched. Ashley kept her eyes down, none of her usual bravado present. They pleaded not guilty, were released on continued personal recognizance, and received strict orders not to contact me or come within 100 feet of my residence. The judge set a pre-trial conference date for 30 days later. As they left, the courtroom extended family members who had come for support glared in my direction. Aunt Susan, my mother's sister, made a point of walking past me. "I hope you are satisfied," she hissed. "Your mother has not slept in days." I said nothing, letting her pass. My lawyer patted my shoulder sympathetically. The family fallout was immediate and intense. My phone filled with voicemails and texts from relatives taking sides. Most supported my parents, operating on limited information and family loyalty. Uncle Rick called me selfish and entitled. Cousin Emma suggested I needed psychological help. Grandma expressed deep disappointment in the most guilt-inducing terms possible. A few reached out more neutrally. Grandpa called to say that while he did not understand my actions, he loved me and hoped for reconciliation. Cousin Marcus texted that he had seen Ashley take advantage of family goodwill for years and understood my frustration, though not my methods. The most surprising support came from my mother's younger brother, Uncle James. He called late one evening after the arraignment. "I saw something similar with your Aunt Karen years ago," he said quietly. "Not as extreme, but the same pattern. Your mother and father have always enabled Ashley at others' expense. I wish you had not needed to involve police, but I understand reaching your breaking point." His understanding was a small comfort in the storm of family condemnation. At work, I requested temporary remote status, unable to face colleagues after taking personal days for what had become a family legal drama. My supervisor agreed, asking few questions beyond whether I needed additional support. I threw myself into coding, finding solace in logical problems with clear solutions, unlike the emotional morass of my personal life. Physical symptoms manifested as the stress continued. Insomnia left me exhausted. My appetite vanished. Tension headaches became constant companions. I startled at every sound in my apartment, half expecting to find intruders despite the new locks and security system. Dr. Rivera, my therapist, diagnosed acute anxiety triggered by the invasion of my safe space. She prescribed coping techniques and suggested short-term medication, which I reluctantly accepted. She also helped me see the situation with clarity. "Your family violated your boundaries so completely that you had no choice but to establish consequences," she explained. "Their reaction now is about losing control over you, not about love." This perspective helped, but did not ease the loneliness. Friends tried to understand, but most had functional family relationships that made my situation seem bizarrely extreme. Jacob remained my strongest support, offering both legal insights and emotional solidarity. About 3 weeks after the arrests, flying monkeys appeared. Family members I rarely spoke with suddenly called with casual pretexts, inevitably steering conversation toward reconciliation. Aunt Patricia suggested I drop the charges as a birthday gift to my mother. Cousin David invited me to dinner, then ambushed me with my parents waiting at the restaurant. I left immediately. The most direct attempt came from my father's best friend Tom, who appeared at my office building one afternoon. "Your father is devastated," he told me in the lobby. "This legal business is killing him. He only wanted to help your sister. Surely there is a better way to resolve this." I explained that I had tried every other approach before involving authorities. Tom listened, then shook his head sadly. "Family is all we have in the end, Matthew. When you are older, you will regret this hardline stance." His words echoed in my mind, later planting seeds of doubt. Was I overreacting? Was family peace worth sacrificing my boundaries and self-respect, Doctor? Rivera helped me recognize these thoughts as the result of lifelong conditioning to prioritize family harmony over my own well-being. The professional impact became clear when my annual review occurred during this period. My supervisor noted my recent performance issues while acknowledging the personal circumstances. My usual exemplary ratings dipped to satisfactory. The promotion I had been working toward was delayed by at least 6 months. Meanwhile, I learned through the legal process that the damages to my apartment and possessions exceeded $3,000. The credit card charges Ashley and Tyler had made without permission totaled nearly $2,000 more. The emotional cost remained incalculable. As the pre-trial conference approached, my lawyer received communication from my parents' attorney. They wanted to discuss a plea agreement that would minimize legal consequences. My participation and perspective would be considered by the district attorney. I agreed to a meeting, curious about their position after weeks of silence. We gathered in a conference room at my lawyer's office, me and my attorney on one side, my parents Ashley and their lawyer on the other. The physical distance of the table between us felt symbolic of the new reality. Their attorney spoke first, outlining a proposed resolution. My family would plead to lesser charges, make restitution for damages, complete community service, and most importantly agree to a no-contact order regarding my residence. In exchange, I would support a disposition that avoided permanent criminal records. My parents sat stiffly, pride visibly battling with pragmatism. Ashley stared at her hands. When given the opportunity to speak, my father cleared his throat. "We made a mistake," he said carefully. "We should have respected your space. But our intentions were to help family, not harm you." It was as close to an apology as I expected, clearly crafted with legal coaching rather than genuine remorse. My mother remained silent, lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval despite the circumstances. I considered their offer. My goal had never been punishment but protection. If this agreement secured my boundaries going forward, perhaps it was sufficient. "I need time to think about it," I told my lawyer. As we left the meeting, Ashley caught up to me in the hallway. Her usual makeup was absent, making her look younger and more vulnerable. "Tyler and I broke up," she said abruptly. "After what happened, he wanted me to blame you for everything, but I know I messed up too." It was the closest thing to accountability I had heard from any family member. I nodded acknowledgement, but maintained my distance. "I am staying with Grandma and Grandpa," she continued. "They are making me get a real job and contribute to expenses. It's actually kind of good for me, I think." "I am glad to hear that," I said carefully. She hesitated, then spoke quickly. "I am sorry, Matthew. Not just for the apartment thing. For years of taking advantage. I never saw it that way before, but therapy is helping me understand patterns." The mention of therapy surprised me. The sister I knew would have mocked such intervention. "Good," I said simply. "I hope it helps." As Thanksgiving approached, I faced my first holiday season estranged from family. Traditional gatherings at my parents' house were clearly impossible given the legal situation and no contact orders. Friends offered to include me in their celebrations, but the thought of witnessing normal family interactions felt more painful than being alone. I decided to volunteer at a community dinner, finding unexpected comfort in helping others while avoiding my own empty apartment. As I served mashed potatoes to strangers, I reflected on the bizarre turn my life had taken in just a few months. The week after Thanksgiving, an anonymous gift basket arrived at my apartment. The card simply read, "Family who understands." Inside were homemade cookies, I recognized as my grandfather's recipe, a book on boundary setting, and a small framed photo of me as a child with my grandparents. I suspected Uncle James, but never confirmed the sender. In early December, I received an email from my mother. Unlike her previous communications, this one was reflective rather than accusatory. "Matthew," she wrote, "the counseling required by the court has helped me see things differently. I have always prided myself on being a good mother, but I realize now that I enabled Ashley's dependence while disrespecting your independence. I am truly sorry for violating your home and trust. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand that will take time and consistent changed behavior on my part." The email was shocking in its self-awareness. My mother had never admitted fault so directly in my lifetime. I read it multiple times, searching for manipulative undertones but finding what appeared to be genuine remorse. My father, however, maintained his position that family loyalty should transcend boundaries. His emails continued to justify their actions as well-intentioned, while acknowledging they had gone too far with execution. The mixed message left me uncertain about potential reconciliation. As the year ended and court proceedings continued, I found myself in a strange limbo. The acute crisis had passed. My apartment was secure. The legal system was addressing the violations, but the emotional aftermath remained complex and unresolved. I had stood firm in my boundaries at tremendous cost. I had lost the easy comfort of family belonging, however dysfunctional it had been. I had gained self-respect and security, but sacrificed relationships that, despite their flaws, had been central to my identity. The journey through this family fracture was far from over, but I had taken the critical first steps toward a life where my boundaries were respected and my space was truly mine. The path forward remained uncertain, but for the first time in months, I could sleep in my own bed without fear of invasion. 6 months after having my family arrested, I sat on my balcony watching the summer sunrise. My apartment was peaceful again, the furniture arranged exactly as I preferred, my possessions undisturbed, the silence comfortable rather than ominous. The legal proceedings had concluded 3 months earlier. My parents and Ashley received 1-year probation and 40 hours of community service each. Tyler, with his additional charges and prior record, served 30 days in county jail. The court mandated counseling for my family members, focusing on boundary respect and healthy relationships. Most importantly, the legal resolution included permanent orders preventing them from accessing my building without explicit written permission. My landlord implemented additional security protocols, and I maintained the camera system that had provided crucial evidence. The material aspects of recovery were straightforward. I replaced damaged items, upgraded security, and reclaimed my space physically. The emotional healing proved far more complicated. In the months following the arrests, I maintained strict distance from my immediate family. This separation, while necessary, created a grief process Dr. Rivera helped me understand and navigate. I mourned the loss of the family I thought I had, the relationships I had valued despite their dysfunction, and the comforting illusion of unconditional support. Gradually, tentative communication resumed. My mother, continuing the counseling beyond court requirements, sent thoughtful emails acknowledging specific boundary violations and her role in enabling Ashley's dependency. Her messages contained no expectations or demands, just reflections on her growth and hopes for eventual reconciliation. My father progressed more slowly. His first communications focused on how difficult the situation had been for them, subtly shifting blame while technically apologizing. Over time, with continued counseling, his messages became more genuinely accountable. In our most recent exchange, he finally acknowledged that their actions had been not just misjudged but fundamentally wrong. "We should never have entered your home without permission, regardless of our intentions," he wrote. "Your boundaries deserve respect, not because of laws or consequences, but because you are an adult worthy of basic dignity. I failed to see that, and I am truly sorry." Ashley experienced perhaps the most dramatic transformation. The court ordeal served as a wake-up call about the consequences of her lifelong pattern of dependency and entitlement. She moved permanently into a modest apartment, with a roommate, maintained steady employment for the first time in her adult life, and continued therapy voluntarily. 3 months ago, we met for coffee in a neutral public location. The sister across the table was almost unrecognizable in her demeanor. She took full responsibility for her actions, detailed the steps she was taking toward independence, and asked thoughtful questions about my boundaries for any future relationship. "I am not asking for things to go back to how they were," she said carefully. "That relationship was unhealthy. I want to build something new based on mutual respect." My relationship with extended family evolved as well. Some relatives maintained their condemnation, unable to see beyond the shocking act of involving police in a family matter. Others, witnessing the positive changes in my parents and sister, gradually resumed contact with new understanding of the situation. Grandpa called on my birthday, his voice warm with reconciliation. "You stood your ground when it would have been easier to give in. I respect that, even if I did not understand it at first." Throughout this journey, I learned critical lessons that transformed my approach to all relationships. Documentation proved essential. Without clear evidence of the violations and my explicit revocation of permission, the legal remedies might have been unavailable. This principle extended beyond family issues to work boundaries, friendships, and romantic relationships. Boundaries require enforcement. Simply stating limits was insufficient when dealing with people accustomed to overriding them. Concrete consequences, while painful to implement, were necessary for real change. Enabler relationships form complex systems. My parents' enabling of Ashley created a destructive dynamic that could only change when all parts of the system were disrupted. My participation in this system, through reluctant accommodation, had allowed it to continue. True love includes respect. Family love without basic respect for autonomy and boundaries is not healthy love at all, but a form of control masquerading as care. The most profound change occurred within me. I no longer felt guilty for protecting my space and enforcing my boundaries. I recognized that my needs and limits were valid, not selfish. I developed confidence in my judgment about violations, rather than allowing others to define what I should tolerate. My apartment, once a crime scene of family betrayal, became my sanctuary again. I reclaimed it through both legal means and psychological healing. Each piece of furniture arranged to my preference, each undisturbed drawer and closet, represented not just physical control but emotional liberation. 6 months after the arrests, I invited a small group of friends over for dinner. As we enjoyed food and conversation in my peaceful space, a friend remarked on how settled and content I seemed. "You have been through something most people cannot imagine," she said. "But you came out stronger." Later that evening, alone again, I reflected on the painful journey from violation to reclamation. The path had been more difficult than I could have anticipated. The cost in family relationships higher than I would have chosen. But the result was a life where I could breathe freely in my own space, confident that my boundaries would be respected. If you have ever faced the impossible choice between family peace and personal boundaries, I hope my story helps you feel less alone. Standing firm when those closest to you violate your trust is excruciating but sometimes necessary. True reconciliation can only happen when all parties acknowledge reality and commit to change. Have you ever had to take drastic measures to protect your boundaries? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life lessons about family dynamics and personal growth. And if you know someone struggling with similar boundary violations, share this video to let them know they are not alone in these difficult decisions. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, loving yourself enough to enforce boundaries is not selfish, it is essential.